She left on a Tuesday. By Friday, she was the villain. Not just to him, to everyone. His mother stopped answering her messages. His sister unfollowed her quietly. Friends she had known for years suddenly looked at her like they were looking at someone dangerous. And the strangest part was this. Nobody ever asked her what happened. Nobody asked why she left. Nobody asked what she survived silently for years before finally walking out the door. They already had the story, and in every version of it, she was cruel. That's the thing dark psychology understands better than most people do. In dysfunctional systems, the person who leaves becomes the threat, not because they lied, but because they interrupted the lie everyone else was surviving inside. And once a system decides you are the problem, it protects itself by rewriting you. Suddenly, your boundaries become coldness. Your exhaustion becomes selfishness. Your silence becomes manipulation. Your escape becomes betrayal. And the more calmly you leave, the more terrifying you become to people who needed you trapped. At first, she tried to explain herself. She thought the truth would matter. So she wrote long messages, careful messages, gentle messages, messages filled with details, context, compassion, messages trying to make people understand that leaving was not impulsive, it was survival. But every explanation disappeared into the same wall because people who benefit from a false story rarely want clarity. They want comfort, and comfort is easier when there is a villain. Dark psychology calls this narrative hijacking, when one person controls the emotional framing of the story before the other person even has time to speak. And once the emotional frame is established, facts stop mattering, because people no longer react to what happened. They react to the character they were told you are. She became unstable, ungrateful, impossible to please, emotionally difficult. Interesting words for a woman who spent years abandoning herself to keep everyone else comfortable. That was the part nobody saw. They didn't see the nights she sat awake rehearsing conversations in her head before bringing up even the smallest issue. They didn't see how carefully she measured her tone so nobody would accuse her of being emotional. They didn't see how many times she apologized just to end the tension. They only saw the moment she finally stopped. And dysfunctional systems always punish the person who stops participating. There's something devastating about realizing people preferred the version of you that was suffering quietly, because that version was easier to control. She remembered sitting in her car one evening after the separation, staring at her phone, watching message after message arrive from people who had never once checked on her during the marriage. But now suddenly they had opinions. Now suddenly they were concerned. Now suddenly they wanted explanations. Not because they cared about her pain, because her leaving had disrupted the emotional balance everyone else benefited from. Dark psychology calls this collective punishment, when an entire group unconsciously coordinates against the person who threatens the stability of the system. And the cruelest part is, many of them genuinely believe they are good people, because social triangulation feels righteous when everyone is repeating the same version of events. She abandoned him. She changed. She became selfish. She destroyed the family. Nobody asked what destroyed her first. The hardest part was not losing the marriage. It was watching people mourn a version of the story that never existed. A version where she was loved properly, he was innocent, and the ending came out of nowhere. But endings like this never come out of nowhere. They come from years of invisible grief nobody wanted to notice, because noticing it would require accountability. And accountability is expensive, especially in families built on denial. There's a sentence her therapist said once that stayed with her for years. Systems do not attack the person causing the dysfunction. They attack the person exposing it. And suddenly, everything made sense. The lies, the whispers, the sudden distance, the rewritten memories, the way people looked at her after the separation, like she had committed a crime simply by refusing to disappear inside the marriage any longer. She had spent years carrying emotional responsibility that was never hers to carry, just like she did as a child. Because children who survive parentification often grow into adults who believe love means enduring emotional exhaustion quietly, until one day, their body finally refuses. And when that happens, everyone who benefited from their silence calls them selfish. For a long time, she kept trying to defend herself, correct misunderstandings, clarify lies, explain context. But eventually she understood something freeing. People committed to misunderstanding you will turn every explanation into more evidence against you. So she stopped defending herself. She stopped correcting every rumor, stopped explaining her pain to people determined not to see it, stopped trying to earn fairness from people emotionally invested in her guilt. And slowly, her life became quieter, cleaner, lighter, not because the lies disappeared, but because she no longer built her identity around disproving them. That was the real revenge. Not exposure, not humiliation, not destruction. Truth. A peaceful nervous system. A life that no longer required survival mode. A face that slowly stopped looking afraid all the time. Truth has a strange way of revealing itself over time. You do not always have to announce it. Sometimes, you simply live differently long enough that the lies collapse under the weight of reality. If you have ever left a relationship and watched people turn you into the villain before you even had time to breathe, hear this carefully, soft but firm. People who only loved the version of you that abandoned yourself were never truly loyal to you. They were loyal to their access to you, and losing that access felt like betrayal to them. But saving yourself is not betrayal. Voice low, even if they need the story to say it was.